There's a lot of way consensus. Yeah.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority Board of Directors to order at 6:33. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Director Kennett.
Here.
Director Matthews, not present. Director Chapman.
Here.
Director Sutherland.
Here.
Director Minkai.
Here.
Director Dominguez.
Here.
Director Gill.
Here.
And we have a quorum? We have a quorum. Thank you very much. Andrea, will you be doing this?
I will. So
Do staff introduction.
be happy to. So good evening, directors. It's my immense pleasure to introduce Samantha Marathi, the new executive assistant to the Open Space Authority. Samantha started working for the authority on March 2nd and has a strong background in management of business operations and executive support. Samantha has hit the ground running in this important role by providing critical administrative and scheduling support to the general manager and to the executive team. As you may know, this role is extremely important in maintaining our external relationships and partnerships with local and state agencies and organizations. And so I'd like to ask Samantha to come up and just introduce herself. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Samantha. As Andrea said, I'm the new executive assistant here at the Open Space Authority. It's a pleasure to meet everyone who I've not met yet. I was originally drawn to the authority's mission of connecting people with nature and preserving natural beauty because it closely aligns with my personal values. Spending time outdoors, especially hiking, is not just a hobby of mine, but something I rely on for my mental health and overall well-being. Which is why I truly appreciate being part of an organization that recognizes the importance of nature and supporting healthy communities. I had the opportunity to attend the Urban Grants Award earlier this month, and it was incredibly meaningful to see firsthand the impact of the board's support for local organizations. It really reinforced the importance of the work being done here at the agency. As I step into this role, I'm excited to continue learning, growing, and contributing to the team. I want to express my sincere commitment to support each of you in your work, and I look forward to collaborating with you all. Thank you, and I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you very much and welcome. We're so glad you're here and what an amazing, important role. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other directors? Welcome. Thank you very much, and we look forward to working.
Thank you. Thank you.
And this is for public comments. At this time, any members of the public will have the opportunity to address the board on any item not on the agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Clerk, do we have any commenters?
If there are any participants joining us via Zoom who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand.
Any members of the public?
There are none.
Thank you very much. And an announcement will be made regarding the items to be discussed in closed session. Legal counsel?
Good evening, Madam Chair. There are 4 items on closed session this evening. The first one is anticipated litigation comments of legal counsel, which concerns the Hiller Bowman property that is adjacent to Rancho Comunidad de Oro. So we'll be discussing that matter as the board, as board may remember, we received a threat of litigation and a complaint over that particular property. Second one is existing litigation concerning, which is listed on the agenda concerning Heritage Oaks Memorial Park. The third one is the Andrade matter, again, existing litigation. And the final item is public employment, general manager performance review. All the details are on the agenda.
Thank you very much. The board is now convened to close session at 6:37. The board has returned from closed session at 7:14. Carolyn, before we go any further, are there any public comments on the closed session items?
If there are any members of the public who are joining us via Zoom who would like to comment on closed session, any of the closed session items, you may raise your hand and I will call on you. There are none.
And legal counsel, are there any reportable actions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are no reportable actions. We've only addressed so far the items 1 and 2. We will reconvene at the end of the meeting for items 3 and 4. There are no reportable actions on items 1 and 2.
Thank you very much. Now on to approval of the February 26th board meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
That would be moved by Commissioner or Director Kennett and seconded by Director Chapman.
Been a long time.
And are there any public comments? Or
If there are any members of the public joining us via Zoom who would like to comment on the minutes of February 26th, you may raise your hand. There are none.
Clerk, can you please call the vote?
Director Kenneth,
Yes.
Director Chapman.
Yeah.
Director Gill,
Yes.
a little out of order. Director Ming Hyde. Director Sutherland,
Yes.
Director Dominguez. Yes.
That passes unanimous. Thank you. We also have special meeting minutes for March 12th to approve. Do I have a motion?
Go ahead.
We can flip it.
Okay,
Director
moved.
Chapman, seconded by Director Kemp. There any public comments?
If there are any members of the public joining us via Zoom who would like to comment on the March 12th special meeting minutes, you may do so now. There are none.
Thank you. And clerk, please call the vote.
Director Kenneth,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Sutherland,
Yes.
Director Ming Hyde,
Yes.
Director Dominguez, Director Gill.
Yes.
So that passes unanimous. And now we move on to consent items. Next is the approval of consent calendar. Do any of the board members want to pull any of the items from consent?
I was
Director
thinking,
Chapman.
yes, in light of our discussion at ABC earlier, maybe we pull item C3 for legal counsel. Clarification. That is a direct preparation of the preliminary engineer's report for the Open Space Authority Acquisition and Maintenance District Number 1.
Through the chair, we can vote for the consent items, excluding C3, and then we can bring it back right after the approval of consent.
Right. So can I have a motion?
I'll do.
Director Gill? Second? Director Ming Hyde.
That is a exclude C3, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Motion to approve the consent items 1 through 6, excluding 3.
And clerk, please call the vote.
Would you like to call for public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course I would. Is there any public comment on these items?
If there are any members of the public joining us via Zoom who would like to comment on the consent calendar, please, you may raise your hand. There are none.
And clerk, please call the vote.
Director Kenneth,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Sutherland,
Yes.
Director Ming Hyde,
Yes.
Director Dominguez,
Yes.
Director Gill.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. And then Director Chapman, would you like to speak to C3, item C3?
This is really for a point of clarification to legal counsel based on a discussion we had at an earlier subcommittee meeting. It was just to give an understanding to some of the new board members of District 1 funds.
Is there a particular question that you want answered or just what is District 1?
District 1 fund, we had a meeting discussing the budget overview of Measure T, Measure Q, District 1, and kind of where the buckets fall. And then there was a question, I'm not trying to recall this, versus parcel versus benefit.
Assessment.
And so this is
Yes.
a benefit assessment versus a parcel. So it was a clarification, and that for the new board members, it was, we would discuss it with you.
This is a benefit assessment district, which is different than a parcel tax.
Correct.
This is a pre-proposition 218 benefit assessment district. So that's why there's no 218 approvals involved. One of the things about this is that I think it was approved in, gosh, I'm going back in my brain on this. I think I want to say 98 or something like that. It's 96. Thank you. 96. Stand corrected. It's been in existence since that time, and this is an annual renewal of that benefit assessment district. The benefit is apportioned based on the engineer's report. So that's why you have an engineer's report and you're directing an engineer's report to be prepared, which is not what you do with a parcel tax. And the property owners vote on benefit assessment districts. There was also a citizen vote back in 96 that basically the voters said we want a benefit assessment district, which is why this is exempt from Proposition 218. There's a specific provision in 218 that exempts this particular assessment. Is that answer?
That's it.
Is that it?
That's it. That was just that additional clarification.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to have a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Second.
C3.
Okay, C3, moved by,
Did you take public comment, Madam Chair?
and is there any public comment?
If there are any guests joining us via Zoom who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. There are none.
Thank you. We have a motion by Director Kennett, second by Director Chapman. Clerk, can we please we do here,
Approve item C3.
approve item C3. Clerk, can you please call the vote?
Director Kennett,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Sutherland,
Yes.
Director Ming Hai,
Yes.
Director Dominguez, Director Gill.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And on to new business. Members of the public will have the opportunity to comment on any matter on the agenda following the presentation by staff and board questions. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. So new business item number 1 would be to approve the appointment of Monica Rodriguez as the District 6 representative to the Citizens Advisory Committee to fill the remainder of a 2-year term ending June 2027. Carolyn, I believe you are presenting this.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, Directors. I'm Caroline Hernandez, clerk of the board, and tonight's presentation is to present to you the possible appointment of Monica Rodriguez as the District 6 representative to the CAC. Staff recommends that the Board of Directors approve the appointment of Monica Rodriguez as the District 6 representative to the CAC to complete the remainder of the current term ending June 30th, 2027. The Citizens Advisory Committee's purpose is to provide many avenues of input to and from the Open Space Authority's diverse communities. This is a 15-member advisory committee made up of 7 district representatives and 8 at-large representatives. District representatives to the CAC must live within the the respective district, while at-large reps can live anywhere within the authority's jurisdiction. CAC appointment terms are for 2 years and begin July 1st and end June 30th. Per Board Policy BRD 22, the Citizens Advisory Committee Handbook of Guidelines and Responsibilities. Unplanned vacancies are to be posted publicly for 45 days at a minimum. The vacancy was noticed on the authority CAC website when it occurred. And the District 6 seat has been vacant since March 2nd, 2025, when former CAC member, the Honorable Lisana Dominguez, was appointed to the board to fill a vacant board seat. On March 2nd, the seat has been vacant since May of 2025, May 22nd. On March 2nd, the authority of 2026, the authority received the application from Monica Rodriguez. Staff vetted the minimum criteria and verified with Director Dominguez to move forward with the nomination. If approved, if the board approves the application tonight, Monica Rodriguez will be assuming that term that began in July 1st, 2025, and will end June 30th, 2027. And Mr. Rodriguez is here. I would like to invite her to come up to the podium to introduce herself and just speak a little bit about her interest in being on the CAC.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Monica Rodriguez. I've lived in District 6 for about going on 11 years now, and I've lived there since I moved to the Bay Area. I grew up in Houston, Texas, where we didn't really have a lot of open space, except for like a few city parks. So moving here 11 years ago and really getting to experience all that the Bay Area has to offer in terms of parkland and just open space and nature is really something that that's really near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate every day. I was just like admiring all the hills on the way over here. So yeah, I'd like to hopefully play a larger role in being able to be a part of this work and help steward and help let people know about the land and how to protect it and how to preserve it.
Thank you very much. We can open the floor to any members of the board for questions or comments, and I'm gonna turn to Director Dominguez first.
Hey, thank you. So I'm very pleased to bring Monica Rodriguez's nomination to the board tonight. Aside of what you've read in her application, she has a background of both nonprofit work and local government and has spent years at the Law Foundation and has served in a multitude of ways as a community leader. And I want to also note that Monica and I served together, which is where I met her, served together years ago as our first board of nonprofits, which is Latina Coalition of Silicon Valley. And I had the opportunity to really see firsthand how she shows up in a governance setting, how she prioritizes community voice in decisions that she makes, and the passion that she has in serving her community. So I think she would be an excellent individual to sit in this committee.
Thank you. Any other board members wish to comment?
My question that I was gonna ask was just answered, so. All for it.
And are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this item?
If there are any members of the public joining us via Zoom who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. There are none.
And I'd like to know if I have a motion.
A second.
Thank you. Motion moved by Director Kennett, seconded by Director Dominguez. Clerk, can you please call the vote?
Let me catch up. Okay, I'm ready. Director Kennett. Director Chapman.
Yes.
Director Sutherland.
Yes.
Director Mingheim.
Yes.
Director Dominguez.
Yes.
Director Gill.
Yes.
Wonderful. That passes unanimously. Welcome to the CAC.
Thank you.
And on to new business item number 2. To receive a presentation from the Valley Habitat Agency on update to the habitat plan. I believe Erin's going to be presenting on this. Are you there?
Thank you. I'm gonna pass this off to a colleague of Valley Habitat Agency, Jerry, who will introduce himself a little bit more, but just want to say that, you know, the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency is one of our agency's most long-running and important partners. Today, we're going to focus a little bit on the actual Valley Habitat Plan update, which tends to be a little bit about the critters that we collectively protect, as well as some of the accounting and how we do that work. I'll say at a future date, we hope to come back to the board with a sort of broader state of the partnership type presentation. We do a lot of different things with the Valley Habitat Agency, everything from permitting to land protection to trails, you name it. So again, tonight is a little bit focus on the Valley Habitat Plan update, which is pretty timely, as Jerry will get into. There's a lot of moving parts there, but staff felt it was important that as a co-permit, as a special participant in the plan, that we get an update, that the board have an opportunity to ask any questions about that update. So that'll turn it over.
Great. Thank you, Aaron, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Am I loud enough? Works okay? Yeah, we do have a special relationship, so thanks for pointing that out. We're partners out here. So tonight will be an overview of what the Habitat Plan is, what we've been doing for the past 12 years, the first 12 years of the plan in implementation, and then what we're going to be doing off into the future. I understand some of you are new here to the board, maybe don't have a lot of familiarity with us or what we do. So I'll go through these slides pretty quickly, but I'll stay all night. If you have questions afterwards and you want to ask me questions about anything, I'll go into as much detail as you want afterwards.
Thank you.
My wife might not like it, but okay. So the Habitat Plan is a 50-year take authorization, which allows for impacts to state or federally listed species in exchange for conservation benefits. Take is defined by California Department of Fish and Wildlife as hunting, capturing, or killing listed species. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service extends that definition to also include harassment and habitat modification. So because our plan meets both of these criteria, we have to consider the full suite of take coverage in our plan implementation. Programmatic conservation plan is meant to address prior failed efforts at conservation on a project-by-project basis. Piecemeal conservation is not only ineffective at species protection and recovery, it's also time-consuming to secure individual incidental take permits. So a programmatic approach resolves both of these concerns and has thus far resulted in superior regional conservation, as I'll elaborate here in a minute. The plan started with humble beginnings. Back in 2001, there were, I think, 3 public projects by our co-permitting agencies, and then there was one private development project that all sort of converged at the same time. These were large-scale projects, transportation, infrastructure, that were all being held up because there was potential for take of threatened species. They were required to prepare habitat conservation plans, which can be done on a project-by-project basis or can be done at a programmatic level with multiple agencies. Since they were all 4 joined together, they said, let's just do it. They pinched their nose and jumped in the water, and that's what happened. For 10 years, they brought on 3 more agencies, and then before you know it, in 2013, we have a programmatic habitat conservation plan that covers the bulk of the county. The 2 numbers in bold at the bottom of this slide here reflect our strategy to protect land at a greater than 2-to-1 ratio relative to impacts. Today, the plan is implemented by the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency. These are the 6 co-permittee agencies that signed on to the plan. We're a joint powers authority, so we have representation from each of these agencies who sit on both of our boards. Other public entities can join or can opt in for coverage under the habitat plan as participating special entities. This is a provision written into the plan for those that didn't get on the train in time, but they wanted streamlined coverage for incidental take permit. They can join as participating special entities. So I would say, we've done quite a few projects with the Open Space Authority as a participating special entity. So you should commend your staff on seeking that streamlined permitting pathway when you can. Okay, sorry, let me see where we are here. So here's a quick look at our conservation strategy. 50 years may seem like a long time, but we're already 12 years in, and we've got a lot of conservation and a lot of restoration ahead of us. You can see that our priority landscape, our priority conservation areas are shaded in gray on this map. And they complement the existing protected open space in the landscape and will result in a more contiguous habitat protection over time. Here's a list of the species that we cover. Most wildlife species have some level of state or federal listing status. Aside from burrowing owl, they've just recently become a candidate for listing under CDFW. We have 3 listed plant species that have listing status with the Endangered Species Act, either state or federal. The rest of them are listed on California Native Plant Society as species of local concern. So let's get into some implementation. What have we been up to for the past 12 years here? Here are a few examples of covered projects that we've covered over the past few years. Private development can be anything from a single family residence to a 100-acre residential subdivision. It can be a data center. It can be warehouses with parking. Any of these projects that impact land permanently, those are covered projects. Public projects are typically operations and maintenance of existing facilities. And then occasionally we have a new project like this one coming up. This is VTA and their development or reconstruction of the interchange at Highway 101 and Highway 25 down south of Gilroy. Okay. It's not the right. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself here. I thought this would be easier. There it is. Okay, so those are the projects. Collectively and cumulatively, we've covered 445 projects over the first 12 years of the permit term. And you can see that most of them were private development. Some of them were public projects. You'll see the little number in pink there. Those are participating special entities who have joined. Those are all 26 agreements that we've signed or executed in the first 12 years. 7 of those, I think, are Open Space Authority projects. Those 445 projects have resulted in 2,000 acres of permanent land cover impacts. So it's just straight conversion of land into the built environment, essentially. But this is about half of the pace that's anticipated by the habitat plan. A number of factors play into that scenario, but I think we can generally agree that fewer acres of land development is better for open space protection, especially when development needs are continuing to be met in urban or suburban areas. Our reserve system now is about 16,000 acres in size. If you contrast that with the 2,000 acres of impacts that we've seen over the first 12 years, you get a conservation ratio of 8-to-1, which is astonishing. That number is probably going to track down over time, but it's an incredible achievement so far. We're happy to see. Okay, here's a map of our reserve systems, reserve units. We call them reserve units, all within the reserve system. We're really trying to capture property within each of the major watersheds. We're also trying to fill in the conservation gaps for wildlife connectivity wherever we can. And we're always on the hunt for properties that have some of the sensitive resources that are important for our covered species. You saw an earlier reference to our restoration commitment. Up until now, we've completed 10 restoration projects. These are all aquatic resources or riparian habitat, with new ones that are planned each year, essentially. The completed projects show up as yellow triangles on this map, and you can see how they really just sort of line up with the green triangles, which are existing reserve unit properties. It's because the habitat plan requires that we prioritize restoration first within the reserve system. Okay, so on to the plan amendment. Since we began work on this amendment in 2022, the list of wishes and needs that we had has evolved. It's sort of a maturing on the part of the agency in understanding how we were meant to achieve the biological goals and objectives of the plan, and how we can use adaptive management provisions already built into the plan to achieve those needs. So we pared back some of our initial requests. We also walked back some requests that were controversial or problematic and would have jeopardized the overall approval of the plan amendment. In the end, we settled on a shorter list of consensus changes that our partners believe puts us in the best position for continued success and relevancy. So we're proposing to add 7 new species. We have 18, as I mentioned before. This would be 7 new species added. Swainson's hawk is already federally protected under the Federal Endangered Species Act. The 2 butterflies that we have here, and also Crotch's bumblebee and mountain lion, are all candidates for listing right now under either state or Federal Endangered Species Act. Badger and shrike, they occur in the plan area. We have them on our properties. You do too. They could be impacted by projects and may be listed sometime within the permit term. So we said, we're building an ark, just come on, brought them on. If any of these species do become listed and they're not covered by the plan, a separate consultation would be required for projects with impacts to their habitat. And since we provide coverage for all the other species, it seems silly to not have full coverage for the full suite of species. This is already showing up with Crotch's bumblebee, by the way. CDFW is requiring pre-construction surveys and may require avoidance measures or mitigation for impacts, maybe even incidental take permits for bumblebees wherever their habitat is impacted. And you can imagine it's everywhere. So we're not sure exactly how that species is going to be listed if it ever does get listed. CDFW does not currently list any insect species. The feds do though. Okay, so this is the expansion of the plan area that we're proposing. When the plan was adopted in 2012, the northwest portion of the county was not included because the cities up there didn't want to become partners to the plan. They're mostly built out. They didn't really need the plan coverage. The northeast was thought to remain largely undeveloped with little to no impacts. So with the efficiencies of the habitat plan working in their favor, our partners now want their projects covered in the expanded area. They basically want the whole of the county opened up for coverage for their projects. And this would be true also. So in the yellow area to the northwest, that's going to be open for public projects, not private development, but participating special entities could opt into the plan within that expanded plan area. So the plan already considers certain land management actions, particularly those that reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire or remove invasive species or otherwise improve conditions for our covered species to be consistent with our conservation strategy. That's already written into the plan now. But our partners on the advent of the California Vegetation Treatment Program wanted to have that program specifically called out. Something to point to a regulatory agency and say, this project is covered, so our project is covered by the habitat plan. The Valley Waters Stream Maintenance Program was not included in the plan back in 2012. They had a stream maintenance program that was already in effect at that time, and they didn't want to change it to try to meet the timeline with the plan creation. So they thought they were going to be okay. Problems arose year 1, year 2, year 3, and it's gotten harder and harder for Valley Water to keep up with their stream maintenance program and all their mitigation needs for the stream maintenance program. So when they heard we were amending our plan, they asked if they could join. And we took a look at their total impacts. We wanted to make sure we weren't going to be blowing the ceiling off of something, but their impacts are primarily temporary. And they recur in the same areas over and over again. Through negotiations with the wildlife agencies, we're going to be able to accommodate that without raising any take limits at all. A couple of other changes in the plan that we're proposing. We've successfully protected Mayan-Yakma. We protected tens of millions of Lysingea, individual Lysingea plant. Hundreds of acres of Lysingea is protected. Currently covered projects conduct surveys for all of our plant species in serpentine habitats. And that typically occurs in the spring when most of them are blooming right now. But Lysingea marches to its own drum. It blooms later in the summer, in fact, late in the summer. And so it does require additional surveys and costs for our partners. So we banked on our success. We said, we've got all these acres protected. We're going to lift the survey requirement. We'll just monitor it. And the wildlife agencies have agreed to it. Kit fox has also not been documented in the plan for decades, if ever. So until they show up, we will not require site-specific surveys for them any longer once the plan amendment's approved. And regarding the other new species that we're adding, we're not going to obligate ourselves or our partners to be required to conduct surveys for mountain lion, badger, or any of the 3 pollinator species that we have. We simply assume that take is occurring with those species, just like we do with our herp species now. So we're proposing to adjust our take limits in 2 ways. First, we're going to start tracking at the natural community level instead of the land cover specific types. For example, we could have 1 combined take limit for chaparral and scrub instead of 3 smaller take limits for coyote brush, mixed chaparral and scrub, sage scrub, conifer woodlands, oak woodlands. Those types of land covers can be also combined. And we're also going to reset the temporary take limit for every 5 years. That was what was written into the plan originally, but in the great haste to get the plan across the finish line at the 11th hour, a few things were missed, and this was one of those things that was missed, so we're going to clear it up now. Okay, so the plan amendment, the big fear was, how much more is this going to cost? I mean, you get the benefits of having more species coverage, but what's it going to cost? When all is said and done, adding 7 new species, expanding the plan area boundary, even accommodating the stream maintenance program, will result in an annual cost increase of less than 1%. It's basically a rounding error. Conversely, by reducing our take requests for 3 different aquatic resource types, we reduce the restoration commitment for those, and that will save the plan an estimated $650,000 a year over the remaining 35 years of the plan. This was an overassumption in the plan. So just as I said, we should be at 4,000 acres of development. We're at 2,000. We're nowhere near. We're at 25% of the way through the permit term, but we're at 1 or 2% of our impacts for some of these resource areas. And yet we have this obligation to restore that is challenging. It's challenging. So by reducing that, it's going to simplify our compliance with the plan in the future. Our partners have all approved us proceeding with the plan amendment. I had a busy couple of years securing approvals, and I have to make up a lot of that time with my family. But ultimately, our co-permittees are now in agreement and with all these proposed changes, and we're ready to move forward. So here's where we are in the process. I don't know if it shows up too well, but that bold step 5, we're all the way down there. Date uncertain, because once this gets into the hands of the wildlife agencies, we don't know what they're going to do with it. Our attempt for this whole 4 years has been to engage with them the entire way, propose every single change, and negotiate, discuss every single change. The wheels came off the tracks last year sometime, and we had to forge ahead without CDFW in particular. So they know what we're proposing. It's coming into them. We're just hoping they can do a pretty expedited review of this and be mindful that we're not operating with grant funding anymore. This is on our dime, so we really want them to hurry up and finish up the process. Okay, and now on to our partnership with the Open Space Authority. Again, happy to revisit any of these topics afterwards, so I'm just kind of breezing through to see where the interest is. This is quite a list here, nice long list, and it demonstrates the partnerships and collaboration between the Habitat Agency and OSA. Mayano Yakma was our first reserve system enrollment. It's owned and co-managed by the Open Space Authority and the Wildlife and Habitat Agency. We have a conservation easement over the property. It remains a jewel of a property with incredible natural resources, and it's very important to the habitat plan. The 7 projects on the bottom are the PSE agreements for coverage that I mentioned earlier. I think about half of those, we can't do half of 7, but nearly half of those are restoration projects. The rest of those were infrastructure, bridges, trails, things like that they needed some help with. And like OSA, we've got a lot going on. This is the near-term priorities for the Habitat Agency. Mentioned earlier that we have about 8 full-time staff. We've got 2 part-time staff. I don't know how we do it all, but somehow we're doing it all. There are dozens of other smaller priorities that aren't on this list that individual staff are working on. Managing 16,000 acres of land is proving to be an extraordinary amount of work, especially when our mandate is habitat enhancement and protection. But I'm happy to go into detail on any of these items on this list if you'd like to have more information about them. And I'll just kind of turn it over to you all to see what you all think.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. You do have a lot going on.
Not just my imagination.
We can open the floor to board members for questions or comments. Director Kennedy.
Any plans for trails on some of your? It is publicly owned, like, I've been asked about the Davis property specifically and Wood Ranch. That, I've been asked about hiking trails through there. Is there any plans for that?
The plan does allow for recreation on other reserve properties. The wildlife agencies would prefer we have zero recreation, but they understand that our partners need recreation. And so it's built into the plan. It's understood that there's going to be some. It really depends on what the natural resources are on a given property, whether there are some that are extremely sensitive that we can't have people walking around. But most of our properties will contemplate trails. Most of them have access roads already. Most of them are riddled with ranch roads that would make really nice trails. In fact, they've designed that way because they are nice access pathways for vehicles and people walking. So it really is a case-by-case basis. I think we have several negotiations with OSA on trails on properties, Tilton Ranch, maybe leading all the way over to Davidson and maybe even Baird. I'm not sure.
Davidson and Baird Ranch.
Yeah.
Next question that's going to be asked of me is time. Specifically for Baird and.
I wish I could answer that question for you. I keep myself safely away from all those negotiations. I know they have been going on for quite a while, and I know that they're ongoing. I really couldn't say exactly when that's going to happen. Sorry, I don't have a good answer for you.
Chapman? Thank you very much. And are there any public comments?
If there are any members of the public who are joining us via Zoom who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. There are none.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question? This might be for both for Aaron and for Jerry, but in our own staff report, it says the habitat plan proposes the following notable changes, and the last two bullets are kind of interest to me. One is about reconsidering the take limits for burrowing owl.
Mhm.
We talked a little bit before the meeting about that.
Sure.
And then the other one is revisiting the requirement for a conservation easement as the only mechanism to protect land owned by the Habitat Agency. And
Yeah.
just like to hear a little bit more about
Yeah, those
two.
are both juicy topics. You got two good ones there. Burrowing owl, the habitat plan, in order for us to authorize us the 200 acres of take coverage that we have for burrowing owl, we were obligated to permanently protecting 600 acres of occupied habitat. This isn't just suitable habitat. This is actual habitat with nests, active nests in it. That's proving to be just about impossible. As most of you are aware, the species has been in steep decline for quite a while. If it weren't for our recent recovery efforts and thanks to your help on recovery sites, they would be gone by now. They would absolutely be gone. So we thought in the beginning of the plan amendment process, we wanted to request additional take. We thought maybe we can get another 100 acres or so because there's certainly a lot of development still going on in San Jose around our regional water facility, which is the 200-acre conservation easement that we have. But that came along with some strings from the wildlife agencies, and they wanted additional buffers, distance buffers. The take they would offer would only come in increments. And so we'd have to meet these targets for land acquisition, which we know we won't be able to do. There's just simply not enough. We can't afford to buy land and compete with Microsoft in their data center development. We're priced out of that. We've already overpaid for the 200 acres that we have up there. So we were starting to see that this was just not going to pencil out for us. We have, meanwhile, in using up those acres of take, we've collected fees. We've got $6-7 million, something like that, in burrowing out fees that will fund the program without any more take being authorized. That will fund the current reintroduction program, the captive rearing, captive breeding, the monitoring. All of that can go on for 5 more years, 6 more years, something like that. Maybe more. I think we figured almost 10 years. So with the remaining 36 acres of take we have, you can see this playing out for several more years, a decade or more, with just the burrowing out program. That's what we prefer to do. The habitat plan, I think, kind of mistakenly assumed that the first priority would be protect this occupied habitat. The priority should have been all along, start recovering the species, because when the plan was approved in 2012, they knew already there was no way they're going to be recovered without these tier 2, tier 3 activities that we're implementing now. I'm happy to say that their numbers are going up because of this reintroduction effort. The owls that we brought onto the property, some of your properties too, are actually returning, doing what they should be doing. So you look at a graph, as explaining earlier, you look at the graph and they had a precipitous fall. We were finally able to convince CDFW to let us start doing a reintroduction program, captive breeding program. They allowed us to do that, a slow wobble down here, and now it's going up through the roof. So we had a couple dozen owls at the low point, a few dozen owls at the low point. We're up to between 200 and 300 owls right now. So it is working, and we want the funding to continue. We don't need to have them covered, and we don't need to issue more take to be able to get the funding for it. If we don't have any more take authorization, and someone's going to be developing a project that impacts owls somewhere in San Jose, Audubon Society or someone is going to force them into some kind of mitigation proposal through environmental review. They've already come to us. A couple of them have come in to voluntarily contribute funding to our burrowing out program. We would be better off, Andrea, doing that. We would be better off not issuing any more take, not having any more land restriction requirements, but just continuing our program with willing buyers, willing sellers on the landscape. So we will be going back to the wildlife agencies as one of the final changes in the plan amendment before we make our formal submittal. But the final change is going to be withdrawing our take request, and then we're going to just let the program play out as it is. Yeah, there are other issues that are kind of circling around in there, but that's the gist of it. And then you mentioned a restrictive covenant. So the habitat plan requires that all of our properties are protected ultimately with a conservation easement. Parts of the plan say conservation easement or similar instrument, but some sections don't say that. And the wildlife agencies have always taken this to mean you have conservation easement over every single property. We buy some properties that are 100% useless to anybody. No, you don't want them. We don't. We need them for habitat, but there's no possible recreational opportunity. There's no use of the property in any way. Ranchers don't want them. They're not going to work for anything. So in cases like that, we want an opportunity to have some kind of an alternative to the conservation easement. Restrictive covenant, deed restriction. I'm sure some of you deal with these instruments. They can be just as enduring as a conservation easement. They're just as protective. They run with the land. They can require wildlife agency approval before they're ever extinguished. And our proposal to them, which seems to be finally favorable, we fought a whole year and a half with them on this one, but I think we finally got the upper hand. They understand that because there are all these protections in place, we can't just sell the property, nor would we want to. This is mitigation. We have to maintain this property. We have to keep it in perpetuity. So a restrictive covenant can run with the land. So at the sunset of the permit term, 50 years from now in 2063, those protective instruments are still in place, and they will be in place forever.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Through the chair, Chair, if the additional species, if agencies, CDFW, et cetera, approve the additional species you guys are recommending, we can issue new playing cards because the
We are. What's funny about our current set of playing cards is they were designed to have this sort of a green border to make it look more natural. It just looks like they're aged. When you look at the cards, they just look like they're old cards that we dragged out of a file somewhere. So yeah, new playing cards are coming.
Thank you. And Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this item?
If there are any members of the public who are joining us via Zoom who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. There are none.
Thank you very much. And this item is informational and there are no actions for coffee. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
New business item number 3 would be to receive a presentation on the Brown Act, including amendments effective January 1st, 2026. And we have our legal counsel here to present to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not a view I normally see. Thank you. So we're going to talk about the Brown Act. I know I'm going to go over some old ground for some of you, and since there's newer members, I'm going to just go over a little bit of old ground, but then I'm going to talk about the changes from SB 707 that went into effect January 1. Some of those provisions don't go into effect until July 1, but those don't apply to you, and I'll explain that when I get to that. So the Brown Act is the open meeting law for local agencies. So at the state level, there's the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. So the Brown Act is specific to local agencies, counties, cities, special districts, etc. So just wanted you to know that at the state level, they have their own open meeting law, which is very similar, but applies to public agencies. Do I just press on this? Thank you. Okay, so this is what the Brown Act says. All meetings shall be open to the public and all persons shall be permitted to attend. And so what is the purpose of the Brown Act? I think much of this is very obvious. It's to facilitate public participation and to avoid secret decision-making. And one of the things to recognize is the Brown Act has been liberally interpreted by the courts in favor of public participation and transparency. And what that means is, for instance, all the closed session exemptions from open meetings, they're construed narrowly. And so those courts favor transparency. And so just when we think about that, and the types of things we discuss in closed session are very narrow in nature. And then the last thing, the other purpose is it's to aid in the conduct of the people's business. And I think this is a very transparent agency and we're all into the people's business, but it's just a good reminder of why we're here and how governments are to act. So what constitutes a meeting? And this is where it gets a little bit sticky. There's the first part that's very obvious. It's a congregation of all of you at the same time in a location, including teleconferencing, which we'll talk about later. And the other thing is you shall not outside of an agendized meeting. And that's the important thing. When you have a meeting, it has to be on an agenda where people can attend. Outside of an agendized meeting, you can't use serial communications of any kind, because then you can inadvertently, and I know people think there's conspiracies in government and people say, oh, they had secret meetings and they did all this, but more likely than not, what it really is, and I know with this agency, you have been very good about avoiding this problem, but it's inadvertent, and you can inadvertently create a serial meeting. So what are examples of serial communications? So in-person conversations and telephone conversations, or a combination of both. So for instance, one of you talks to another one here at the meeting, after the meeting, and then another one calls one of you who had the conversation, and then you have the same conversation. We don't have a problem yet, right? Because it's only 3. The key is 4, which is your quorum. So you can't speak to 4 outside of a noticed and agendized public meeting. So as long as you don't talk to another person, you're fine. But the minute you cross the threshold to 4 is when it becomes a problem. And so being mindful of who you've talked to and who they've talked to is important, because you may not know that one of you have already talked to one or two other people, and now you're creating a serial meeting. And that's how those get created inadvertently. And this can be created by email too, right? And it can be, you had a in-person conversation, a telephone conversation, and an email exchange, and you got to 4 or 5 inadvertently. Or it can be just an email chain. You all just start chiming in on an email chain. When I've sent this board in emails, you'll notice that you don't see anybody on the email. And the reason is I blind copy you folks, so you don't inadvertently hit reply all and start a serial communication. And that's a good that's a good best practice to think about in terms of communicating with the board.
For example, I have. Actually, I have one topic. Without the the open meeting or the public meeting, I discussed with my staff board members. I just discussed, and that board member discussed to another one, and the other is other one. But it means that is a Brown Act, because I just talk only one board member.
Right. That's the problem with serial meetings and serial communications, is being aware of who else you're talking to and who you've talked to. And you may not know who they will talk to later. But it creates a serial meeting. Once you get to 4, however that happens. And there used to be a theory, people used to say, well, no one took any action, but deliberation is part of it too. So, and so I see Director Dominguez nodding her head that she understands that it's not just action, it's actual deliberations too. So you could have a serial communication about no action at all, and it still is a violation. So.
Thank you.
And then the other way you do it is intermediaries. So, your general manager or a staff member can reach out to you individually, and maybe reaches out to 4 of you or 5 of you or all of you. And as long as the communications shared with the others is not shared, just has those conversations in a silo and doesn't share what the other board members are saying, that's fine. But when you start using intermediaries, whether it's staff, legal counsel, or anyone else for that matter, member of the public, you can use an intermediary to create a serial meeting inadvertently. So that's the other thing to think about here. And for a member of the public, it would have to be really contrived, right? That's not going to happen generally. But let's say, well, I'll talk to that person, and that person can go talk to another director and another director and another director. You're set in motion a potential serial meeting. Okay, the exceptions. So there are exceptions. The first one is the conference exception. So if there were a conference, say it was a CSDA conference, and 4 of you went or more went to attend the conference, that's fine. You can be in the room all together. It's not a problem. It's not specifically about district business or authority business. There is no problem with going to a conference with a majority of you, or at least a quorum. The other exception is the community meeting exception. So an open and publicized meeting organized to address a local community concern. If 4 of you wound up, or 4 or more wound up showing up to that community meeting, that's not an issue. And I'm going to give you the caveat at the end of these 4. The next one is attendance of a majority at a meeting of another body or local agency. So let's say 4 or more attended a city council meeting, not a problem. And then attendance at a social or ceremonial, this is the social or ceremonial exception, which is fine. There's a big event, a groundbreaking, a ribbon cutting, whatever it is, it's ceremonial in nature. let's say it's something, the city was doing and you all wanted to attend it. There's no issue with that. Now for the caveat. You should not discuss amongst yourself business of a specific nature that's within the subject matter of the board. And that's the key. As long as you don't start, hey, in the back of the room, 4 of you start conversing about authority business, you're fine. But you can attend these are the exceptions to the rule of meeting, what a meeting is. There is another exception that I didn't put on this list partly because I've counseled my other districts this way as well. And that exception is you can, a majority of you can attend an advisory body meeting like a CAC meeting or a standing committee meeting, but it's in a small, close-knit community like this, it's probably advisable not to do it because you're only allowed to observe. You can't speak. And so I leave that up to you, but I just wanted you to know that there's that option and that exception, but I don't encourage it, I would say, because I think it can lead to conversations and then you have to say, I'm sorry, I'm only an observer. So. Okay, so the big question, I'm sure, what about social media? And, before a few years ago, AB 992, there was, what do we do about social media? The Brown Act hadn't caught up to modern technology. And so they created this exception for social media. So you're allowed to participate on social media platforms. You may communicate with your constituents and citizens via social media. And some of you may be friends with each other on social media. And this was set to expire. AB 992 is set to expire this past January. SB 707, which I'll get to later, took away the sunset. It didn't really change anything else, but now it's permanent, this social media exception. Now, there's rules for social media that you have to be mindful, and I don't think they're too draconian, but a majority of the members must refrain from communicating with each other on a social media platform to discuss, again, subject matter of the jurisdiction. And that's the key, the subject matter of the jurisdiction. If you're exchanging, my daughter just had a baby or whatever it is, that is not the subject matter of this jurisdiction. So it's about authority business. It doesn't mean you can't be friends otherwise. It's just about authority business. And then you can't respond directly to so one of you posted on social media, look how great the OSA and what it's doing here. The rest of you should not communicate about that. That one person has made a post and a communication, and so you should not respond to that. Here's the kicker. This means emojis, GIFs, and icons too. No thumbs up, no smiley face, no GIF with a or anything like that. It's just, even that. So that's the key with social media is you see your fellow board member post something, don't respond. Just say, okay, so SB 707. And SB 707 was effective January 1, as I pointed out, there's some provisions that go into effect July 1. Those do not apply to you. I'll explain that in a minute. So here are the changes. The first change does not apply to you, but the only reason I'm telling you about this is because many of you or all of you are involved in other agencies or go to other meetings of agencies and you'll see these things. And how come we're not doing that? Because you're not required to. So the first one is for eligible legislative bodies, which are cities in counties in excess of 600,000 people who have a population of over 30,000, counties, special districts which cover the entirety of a county and have a certain full-time equivalent employee. You have to have both full-time employee count. I think it might be 200. Don't quote me on that, but the OSA doesn't fall into either category because we don't cover the entirety of Santa Clara County. The idea behind this provision I'll explain in a minute was it was assuming these are agencies with more resources than smaller special districts. So they've carved out this exception. I know the CSDA was concerned about these provisions being applied to all special districts. So this was what they hammered out. They hammered out this compromise. So it requires translation of agendas and the meeting webpage. And they have a specific criteria for when you have to translate. It has to be, if I'm going from memory, but it has to be something like 20% of the population of a particular language that is non-English speaking. And then you have to translate the agenda and the webpage. And then there's outreach to non-English speaking communities and organizations, which is also required. And if there's translation and interpreter request, the agency has to assist with that. I would think that this agency would probably do that anyway, but that there's an actual embedded in law to have that translation service, to accommodate that translation service. And then the requirement that meetings be conducted in two-way telephonic or audiovisual platform. Now, most agencies are doing this already anyway, so it's not much of a leap, but now it's embedded in law that they will have to do that. And then there's other things about addressing disruption in telephonic or internet service. So you may hear about these things. So I just want you to be aware that if we're not violating the law here. It's just that these are requirements of these eligible legislative bodies. And then the other thing that was added was teleconferencing for just cause and for participation by a member of a legislative body with a disability. I'll talk about the last one first. There was the Attorney General opined, and if you know about Attorney General opinions, they're not binding law. They're persuasive, but they're not binding like a court case. And so the Attorney General had opined some time ago that if there's an elected official with a disability, that there was no requirement to accommodate the elected official under the ADA or in some other instance, because give and take in person of elected officials was an important part of governance. Well, post-pandemic, the Attorney General sort of did a 180 on that and issued a new opinion saying, well, with the advent of media platforms for meetings, it doesn't make sense not to accommodate anymore. So it's all of a sudden created a stir. So like, what do we do? What do we do in this instance? Now, if you had asked me a year and a half ago what to do, I would have said to you, let's do the accommodation per the Attorney General's recommendation. Now it's very clear. It's in the statute. And it says that there will be accommodations for any elected official or member of a legislative body, which would include Citizens Advisory Committee in our case, accommodations pursuant to the ADA. And that would include allowing them to teleconference in. And then there's the teleconferencing for just cause, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then there's teleconferencing for advisory subsidiary bodies, another new definition that I'll talk about. And then newly elected members of a legislative body must be given a copy of the Brown Act. Previously, that was just encouraged. It wasn't required. Now it's required. And I know that Caroline has sent all of you a copy of the Brown Act in any event to be fully compliant. But it's now a requirement. You won't get it every year, but every time there's a new board member, that board member will get a copy of the Brown Act. And so I want to talk a bit about teleconferencing, and I'll get to the just cause thing after I talk about traditional teleconferencing, which is unchanged by SB 707. And then I'll talk about the just cause teleconferencing, and then I'll talk about subsidiary advisory bodies. So under traditional teleconferencing, and many of you have experienced this before, at least a quorum of you must be present in the meeting, and each location where people are teleconferencing in from needs to be identified on the agendas. That's why you'll see sometimes on agendas, this person is in hotel in Waikiki and, in a particular room or a conference room or something like that. and each location must be accessible to the public. And the agenda must provide the public the ability who attends in that location, the ability to address the board. And then all votes have to be by roll call. So those are the general requirements. And you think, many years ago because I've seen this often with, I think a lot of times with, in rural areas with spread out districts, teleconferencing many times can be a very good thing for ease of business. But then I always used to think years ago, well, there's all these postings about, and people are in Hawaii or in Europe or wherever, and they're zooming into, or back in the day, calling into a meeting. Are people like, does anyone ever really show up? So I asked a colleague of mine one time, you ever hear of anyone showing up at someone's hotel? And he said, yeah, I have actually one instance. And I couldn't believe it. He said, had a board member who was calling in from Paris on vacation and called in from Paris. And I said, your board member called in from Paris? I wouldn't do that, but I love Paris, but I wouldn't do that. So, and someone showed up to the meeting. They were in town and it was a constituent, and they showed up to the meeting and the constituent sat there in the hotel room with this board member. So it happens. And so what's just cause? And some of you may remember we had the emergency and just cause provisions for people who get ill or have other things they have to tend to, family, etc. The legislature has now collapsed just cause. They got rid of the emergency circumstances, calling it emergency circumstances, and everything is now just called just cause. The other thing is it's no longer required that that the board has to approve of that person zooming in for just cause, which was kind of silly because in all instances that I've encountered, no one ever says, no, you can't zoom in. You're sick and you can't zoom in. You should be here with your, with whatever you have. That never happens. So fortunately, they took that requirement for the board to vote to allow someone to come in just cause. The person just needs to notify you and us in advance. And here are the examples. I'm not going to go through all of them, but some of them, contagious illness, childcare, caregiving need, travel on official business of the legislative body or another state or local agency, immunocompromised family members, or a medical emergency. There's also one for military service obligations for people who are more than 50 miles outside, away from the location. So requirements for just cause, their notice and posting for traditional teleconferencing is not required because it comes up. Caroline might get a call at 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting and say, hey, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to zoom in. Is that okay? And then, so it's just the notice and posting are not required. You should notify Caroline as soon as possible, or as the opportunity arises, and it could be right up to the time the meeting starts. It's not hard and fast, but that notification is required. Here's the kicker. The member must participate both through audio and visual technology. So they should be on the screen talking to you. And unfortunately, it's only limited to 2 meetings per year for you folks because we're at a threshold. If it's 1 meeting a month, it's only 2 times. If it's 2 meetings a month, per month, it's 5 times, I believe. So, and we never really had regular meeting because November and December were always only 1 meeting. So you're limited to twice per year. And then disclose whether they're individuals over 18 years of age that are present in the room in the remote location, and the general nature of your relationship. It doesn't have to be specific, but the general nature. Okay, so any questions about teleconferencing? Okay, move on to eligible subsidiary bodies. Yes, Catherine.
So my question is, if you're traveling for business or your other job, that does not fall under those exemptions.
That's
You
right.
should just ask to be dismissed or an excused absence.
You should just, yeah, exactly. Or use the traditional teleconferencing if you can. The traditional teleconferencing has no limit on it. It's just another posted location. You have to have a place that's available for the public to.
Should have plenty of notice that we're traveling.
Correct. And yeah, because Caroline has to post the location on the Friday before, technically the Monday before in a pinch, but the Friday before has to be posted on the agenda.
You didn't mention texting or
Same thing.
just.
Any form of communication, but it's a great point to bring up because texting is so easy. You can be on a text chain.
So,
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Eligible subsidiary body. So this wouldn't apply to the board, but it could apply to, say, the Citizens Advisory Committee. They apply. So this is a teleconferencing rule, and they can have permanent teleconferencing. And they could have the entire CAC not appear in person, except the staff member still has to be present in the room. And the body can have primary subject matter jurisdiction over elections, budgets, or spending proposals, and the CAC does not. But you would the board would have to make specific findings every 6 months that you're authorizing this and make findings as to why it's necessary. And then members must participate by two-way audio-visual connection, which we are not set up for. In other words, not only is their face on the screen, but you're zooming into them. Everyone is seen on a screen. So we're not set up for that, but that is an option. And the camera must remain on. So that is something that is available. I think this is the last slide I have, and this is about executive compensation reporting. Until now, it was your executive. So in our case, the general manager, you'd have to report out in an oral report what the compensation is. That is expanded now to include department heads and similar administrative officers. So this probably will have to be done when you approve the pay plan, the salary pay plan every year. I'll help staff state orally what compensation is. And what must be reported is very broad. It's salary, benefits, and any form of compensation. So they're just wanting us to be more transparent about that. I'm happy to take any questions, or if there's anything I haven't covered that you have questions about, happy to answer them. But I hope this was at least helpful and not too boring.
Any questions or comments from board members?
Thank you.
Any questions from the public?
If there are any members of the public who are joining us via Zoom and would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. There are none.
Thank you very much. This was an informational item only. No actions are required. On to new business number 4. Kind of a master contract for RFP 2026-1 hazardous materials consulting and testing services. Aaron? You're up.
Great, thank you, board. My name is Aaron Aber. I'm a natural resources manager here, and we're going to cover a little bit about hazardous materials 101, which is slightly more thrilling than the Brown Act, I think, and then talk about sort of why we need those services. So the recommendation from staff is to enter into a 5-year contract with Locus Environmental for a period of 5 years for $300,000 for the services that I'll describe in greater detail in the report. So just a little bit of background, unfortunately, you've probably heard that saying, better living through modern chemistry. Well, that was really a thing after World War II in particular. So in the 50s, 60s, 70s, A lot of materials that we now understand to be toxic to wildlife, toxic to ourselves, were used in just everyday building materials. Probably most of you have lived in a building that had lead paint. Probably you have lived in a building that had asbestos, by way of example. So, pretty much all of us are exposed to these things, unfortunately. And all of that is also true in sort of these rural settings as well. They may be chemicals you're less familiar with, but certainly on farms and ranches, a lot of very heavy pesticide use, particularly in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, is, kind of that tail end of the Valley of Heart's Delight. So, for better or for worse, these sort of trace contaminants, often from 40, 50 plus years or so, are present in the environment at sort of varying concentrations. In our case, locally, we also have some former mines that expose materials that are otherwise hidden in the earth. We have gun ranges, we have military testing sites in some areas. So those are kind of a little bit less typical, I think you could say, but are areas of potential contamination. The other thing that we have, unfortunately, particularly I would say in Coyote Valley, and I'll show you a picture or two, is illegal dumping of soils and other kind of construction debris. So there we have kind of a foreign source of material, often from some of those houses that I was describing that may contain those hazardous materials. So we have a little bit more cause than many others to test for hazardous materials. So just to give you a little photo, this is looking, I think, north on Santa Teresa. This is a soil pile. This is actually dumped on city property, but sometimes that comes onto our area. Derek could give you a whole treatise on how to nag those agencies to pick up that material, but it's an uphill battle. When those materials are dumped on our property, depending on the nature of what's kind of visible, we might elect to test that, especially if it's looking more like construction debris, right? We don't want to expose our workers or anyone to something we're not really quite sure about. So rapid testing of these can be warranted in certain situations. Another use case, this is Fisher Creek in the middle of Coyote Valley. There's oftentimes kind of in ranching areas and farming areas, there's like somewhere where the farmer or rancher back in the day kind of put their junk. Maybe when dumps, when before Kirby Canyon was open, for instance, or folks who feel that those fees are too high. So you really get, unfortunately, throughout all my career, every ranch land I've ever managed has something like this. In this case, this is a 50-gallon drum of God knows what, and we need to test it in order to take it out of the creek. Similarly, you can see Rachel, our watershed restoration specialist. I'm sort of dragging her out to all these sites. But this is another location. This kind of just looks like household debris. I doubt it's hazardous, but again, we want to test these things before having volunteers or having staff sort of clean them up. And again, you'd be looking for common contaminants like lead paint, car batteries, gasoline, etc. So again, if it's a more recent thing, you might find higher concentrations of those materials. If it's an older thing, some of that might have washed away already into the environment. So it kind of varies by site. Another example, and I swear Rachel does other things. It's just, I'm taking the photos. This is a site at the bottom of the North Coyote Valley Hill. This is actually kind of adjacent to a wetland area. This area actually has been tested. There are some concentrations of lead and I want to say chromium, which is probably either car batteries or gasoline when gasoline had lead in it, that were sort of dumped in this sort of mixed debris pile. So hopefully before the end of this fiscal year in June, I think we actually have an RFB out as I speak, or maybe this week, for a contractor to come in and clean this up and dispose of that lead contaminated soil at a special location using special sort of equipment and BMPs. So this is kind of an example of where we've done the testing. We know we have a contaminant at a level that probably warrants cleaning up, and we want to dispose of that properly. And then, of course, we just have a bunch of junk on top of that, right? So not all of that is hazardous materials, but a lot of it needs to be either recycled or disposed of properly. Another kind of use case of this contract. In many cases, when OSA or our partners acquire a piece of property, they'll do a little bit of due diligence on hazardous materials. These are called phase 1 or phase 2 environmental site assessments. And with those phase 2 environmental site assessments, it's usually because they had some sense that based on maybe oral reports from whoever lived there or aerial photos, some sense that there was an activity on the property that was likely to have hazardous materials associated with it. And frankly, if you're talking about farms, you're almost always talking about DDT. So, sometimes it makes sense to flag that in a phase 1 and then do this second thing, which is actually to test the soil for contaminants. So in this case, we're looking at the southern part of Laguna Seca. It's been tested in a limited basis. In this case, they got high concentrations of lead in the soil, which again is probably gasoline from a while ago. But they didn't really test how broad or how deep this contamination is. So when we're thinking about restoration in this case, we want to understand the concentrations of that lead, like how concentrated, how hazardous is this? And then there's sort of a question of whether we need to develop BMPs or where best management practices or wear personal protective equipment when doing construction around it, or in some cases whether you actually want to haul that material off site. So there's all these different strategies you might do to sort of mitigate the exposure risks to our staff or to contractors. So in this case, we want to do a little bit more testing to kind of get our heads around that. It's part of the cost of doing restoration or doing construction projects in a lot of different contexts. Another example where we use these kind of services, this is the Kuzia property. It's kind of right just before Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve if you're driving on Palm. In this case, for whatever reason, someone in the, I think, 60s or 70s decided to build a little airfield for model airplanes. And they wanted to bring in like soil to create a landing strip. In this case, for whatever reason, they took a bunch of serpentine soil. And serpentine, you mostly sort of think of it for its amazing habitat qualities, and that it definitely has. But serpentine is also quite naturally high in long chain asbestos and chromium. So that means when folks are doing construction in serpentine soils, like we did at, say, Mayon Yakima, you actually have to have a personal air monitor and do testing to make sure you're not exposing workers or staff to these, again, naturally occurring sort of materials, in this case, again, asbestos and chromium. So in this case, we don't really think it's worth hauling all this stuff off, right? It's quite a bit of soil. It's regrowing naturally. It's part of a grazing property in this case. But we do want a plan, it's called a soil management plan, that kind of looks at the concentration of those materials and says, well, if you do signage, if you fence it, if you make sure it's not disturbed, those kinds of measures that you can kind of leave it in place, but again, sort of mitigate that risk for a tenant, for construction workers, et cetera, et cetera. So again, sometimes when you have trace levels of hazardous materials that don't warrant remediation or don't warrant like totally being enclosed off, you might go with one of these soil management plans. Again, because these materials are sadly kind of ubiquitous in anywhere that's been ranched or farmed or was a house from the 50s or 60s, 70s, these are both, real things that, we as an agency need to take seriously. And they're also quite common for better or for worse. Another good example is we're, contemplating trails in mid-Coyote Valley, thinking about different alignments. In some cases, we want to do more testing based on prior information we might have from a phase 1 report or a limited phase 2. We might say, well, based on the nature of the construction activity we're planning, in this case, a trail or a multi-use trail, we might want to do some selective sampling around that, knowing that we're going to be disturbing those soils. Again, sort of as a precautionary measure, in this case, based on a history of farming and, probable DDT. So the scope of services under this contract, I kind of just give you a little bit of a 101, and I can go as deep as you want on this stuff, but phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments, and then those are again when we're looking to acquire a property. That's usually part of that due diligence you do, or like a partner at Post might do to just sort of quickly characterize things. Hazardous materials testing can take shape in many forms, usually through a phase 2, or you might grab a sample from a building. Rapid testing of illegally dumped soil piles, that was something that we were looking for in this RFP. Again, if we want to get something off our property in a relatively quick turnaround period, how responsive could the consultant team be in doing that testing? Developing health and safety plans. Those are really part and parcel of having workers, volunteers, et cetera, work around some of these materials. Like I said, unfortunately, trace contamination is a pretty common thing. So developing a set of best management practices, which, honestly, I've been around a lot of these in my career. Usually they involve wearing gloves, they involve, glasses, involve don't eat the dirt. That's kind of the main thing I would pass along to all of you. And then other times, like I was mentioning at Maiona Yakima, where you're working around serpentine, you have that naturally occurring long chain asbestos. You might do that air monitoring where workers will actually be sort of wearing their PPE, but they'll have a little collector on them. And then that collector will basically a little gas chamber will be sent to a lab, and they'll say, okay, how much of this potential contaminant did this worker experience? And usually, almost all times in my experience, those will come back negative, and then you can actually take off some of that more intensive kind of PPE, like those Tyvek suits you might see people in, for example. So developing health and safety plans, and then providing oversight of some of our cleanup or remediation work. You might think of that wetland at the bottom of North Coyote Valley Hill, where we have, I think it's like 10 cubic yards of contaminated soil. Well, we'll have a contractor come in there and clean it up, and we might want a consultant to make sure that they're doing that the right way. So that's kind of the breadth of services. And like I said, I'm happy to go deeper on those if you're interested. For this particular RFP, we received 9 proposals, which is quite a bit, I would say. All really good qualified firms for the most part. We ended up interviewing 2 firms just to kind of narrow it down and figure out what was the best fit for our need. And out of that interview process, we came to recommend Locus Environmental as the most qualified bidder. So once again, staff's recommendation is to authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Locus Environmental for hazardous materials testing and consulting services for a period of 5 years and not to exceed $300,000. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Aaron. Very thorough presentation. I think you've addressed all of our issues. Thank you. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this item?
If there are any members of the public who are joining us via Zoom who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. You're next.
Thank you. Then I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the master contract for RFP 2026-1 hazardous materials consulting and testing services. Director Chapman, Director Dominguez. Moved by Director Chapman, seconded by Director Dominguez.
Okay, Director Kenneth,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Sutherland,
Yes.
Director Ming Hai,
Yes.
Director Dominguez,
Yes.
Director Gill.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. And now we are on to the committee summaries. The first one is the Citizens Advisory Committee, which is the meeting I attended earlier this week. One of the things I just wanted to bring back to the board is when they were discussing the urban grant program, one of the CAC members had mentioned how the program had been in effect for 10 years. And so thinking that it may be a good opportunity to showcase what the agency has done over the past 10 years, since that seemed to be a milestone. And that was what I wanted to highlight to all of you. And then the next one is an update on the Administration and Budget Committee. And that happened just earlier this evening. Justina gave an overview to the ABC committee about the finances for the organization and kind of prepared us for the budget discussions that will be coming later in the year. Very well presented presentation and very helpful. It was helpful in several levels. And informational reports. And I don't think there are any other committee. Thank you. No other committee summaries. General Manager's report.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2 items, and then I'll pass it on to other members of the management team. As the board is now aware, on March 19th, the California Public Utilities Commission approved placement of a high voltage converter terminal by LS Power Grid California at the PG&E Metcalf substation, rather than on the undeveloped agricultural land in Coyote Valley on the east side of Monterey Road, where plans are underway for design and implementation of critical wildlife crossings connecting the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Diablo Range. By selecting the environmentally superior alternative, the CPUC decision not only greenlights the LS Power Energy project, but ensures that an over $120 million of public investment to protect 1,600 acres of Coyote Valley lands will not be undermined. You may be surprised to hear that it was back in 2022 that the Open Space Authority first heard that CAISO, the California Independent System Operator, had green-lighted a 1,000-megawatt transmission terminal project in the vicinity of Metcalf substation and would then select an energy company to construct and manage the project. Once LS Power was selected as that company, they met early and often with the Open Space Authority. They expressed a preference for co-locating with the existing PG&E substation at Metcalf. Initially, PG&E was not interested in co-location, and this forced LS Power to find a different property to the south in the vicinity of preserved lands and the planned wildlife crossing in Coyote Valley. With the engagement of our state representatives and for other reasons, LS Power and PG&E came to agreement that co-locating the new energy infrastructure at PG&E's existing substation property could work, which eliminated the need for LS Power to have to underground more than 2 miles of transmission lines along Monterey Road and in the Coyote Creek Parkway, and would also reduce environmental impacts and minimize disruption to nearby neighborhoods. As was stated in the Mercury News article, this outcome shows California doesn't have to choose between protecting iconic natural landscapes and delivering clean energy infrastructure. We can have both. I'd really like to express my thanks to our planning, real estate, and legal staff who've been working on this negotiation and successful outcome for the past 4 years. I also want to express my deep appreciation to our communications team, Charlotte Graham, Anna Marie Pilon, and Avery Cruz for planning and executing the March 20th press conference, press releases, and social media announcements of the CPUC decision and agreement between LS Power, PG&E, and the OSA. I also want to thank Directors and Chair Kathy Sutherland and Director Dominguez for attending the press conference last Friday. We actually had a CAC member attend as well. And the board should have received from Charlotte all of the media that's come out about this announcement. So very successful outcome of that hard work. And secondly, I also want to thank our urban grants team led by Jackie McBride and our staff who reviewed all the submitted grant applications for the 2026 grant program focused on the theme of climate resilient communities. I believe our staff and the board executed a great Urban Grants Award night at Mexican Heritage Plaza. It was really rewarding to be investing close to $1 million in 15 community-based organizations and projects at a very important time in our city, our county, our nation. So with that, that's all I have to report. Caroline, you have a short video to show? Thanks. For those of you who missed it.
San Jose's last open spaces was at risk of shrinking because of a large new power project designed to keep energy reliable in the city. But the state just approved a plan that is a very rare win-win for the community. ABC 7 Eyewitness News South Bay reporter Dustin Dorsey explains how it will make San Jose greener in more ways than one.
Today marks a major milestone.
Preserving this beautiful open space while building infrastructure to keep up with energy demand. That was the problem in South San Jose's Coyote Valley. The Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority teamed up with PG&E and other utilities to find a solution.
It is one of our last spaces that we can preserve to make sure that we have access to open space. We have wildlife crossings, that we're able to continue to grow food here in this valley. The fact that we were able to make this a win-win for everybody is so encouraging.
The location of the new high voltage converter station is just as important as what it will provide. Originally, this new energy project was set to go right here, where new wildlife crossings are set to come to this open space. Instead, it's sliding just up Monterey Road to PG&E's Metcalf substation.
By using our existing infrastructure, we're avoiding new impacts to the land around us and speeding up the project timeline at the same time.
The power grid works as a network. This converter station will help move large amounts of power from South San Jose to the rest of the city.
This project is capable of bringing enough power in to power 750,000 new homes. And without it, it risks reliability of the grid starting in the next couple of years.
San Jose City Council member David Cohen says this agreement proves you can have reliable energy while meeting climate goals.
These are important buffer lands for flooding. They're important open space. It's an important ecosystem wildlife corridor. And so for all those reasons, we should be focused on making sure these lands stay intact while we also improve our energy infrastructure and our economic development.
Construction is expected to start this year to get power up and running by 2028. In South San Jose, Dustin Dorsey, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Monitor just came out today.
Other managers report out, please. Thanks.
Good evening, board. Two things. First, we're going to be leveraging technology. We're just sending out developing a contract with Radbridge. It's an organization that uses cell phone data to track visitors, where they're coming from on the properties, how long they're staying on the properties. This is to help us better understand the use of our preserves and then also help with management into the future. So stay tuned for that. We'll be bringing that to the board once we start getting some of that analytical data coming in. And then second, I want to introduce Gavin Comstock, who will be coming up to present about the outreach opportunities.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Gavin Comstock, Volunteer Programs Administrator. We've met before. Right after that fantastic grant awards ceremony, I emailed you all April outreach update, giving you a good look at where we'd be this coming month. I just wanted to come before you and ensure if you had questions, I could provide answers or support. I want to bring to your attention that we have, since that email, added an event in District 5 on April 11th. It'll be at Marshall Cottle. It's a Master Gardener Spring Fair. And then I, of course, draw your attention to Earth Week, the weekend of April 19th. We will be activated at Santana Row. You'll hear more about that shortly. As well, we're a sponsor of Viva Calle. We'll be at a STEM Zone event in Santa Clara at the convention center that's reportedly expecting up to 10,000 people. We'll also be at Morgan Hill Earth Day. co-located with Coyote Valley Discovery Days and some other great events. One other I'd bring to your attention is Mocher Earth Day event. While not an outreach, it is an education team activation at one of our premier properties where if you chose to show up or you were interested in joining us, of course, Mel Sarmento would be happy to have you there and we could style you out. Any questions at this time? All right.
I'll just say real quick, I had the pleasure today of hearing Terry Tempest Williams speak, and she's a great author. And I wrote down two of the quotes that I'll just share with you. Art bypasses rhetoric and goes straight to the heart. The other one that I quite liked says, if we're present, we'll know what to do. If we're present, we'll know what to do. And I would suggest this time of year, the best way to be present is to go to Mayan Yakima and check out the wildflowers.
Good evening, directors. Nick Perry, Long Range Planning Manager, Coyote Valley Project Director. I am happy to report that Coyote Valley Discovery Days launched last Friday. We had our webinar, our survey launched. It's open until May 17th. If you'd like postcards to help promote the survey, we want to get as many responses as we can. There's some on the desk outside. But our first big Discovery Days event was set up on Saturday outside the Children's Discovery Museum in downtown San Jose. And it was a fantastic day. I'm so proud of what the team was able to accomplish. I'll just see if I can get this to go. Glimpse of part of the exhibit. Partner Post was out there. They used some native animals. That's the CV Camp exhibit. There was also, so that's the CV Camp exhibit where we had people vote on their favorite public access destination. Over 160 people voted. Over 200 people came and stopped by that booth. We also had work from the education team, the volunteer team, doing really cool interactive events for kids and families. Over 260 people interacted with us there doing arts and crafts, looking at animals and pelts. Really fun day. We're doing it all over again at Santana Row, as Gavin mentioned, on April 19th. We also have an open access day at the North Coyote Valley Hill where the CV Camp exhibit will be set up on April 10th, Friday in the evening. And we're going to be doing the exhibit also at the Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve on April 11th. So encourage you, please help spread the word. Come stop by at one of the events. We'd love to see you. Really excited to keep doing the Discovery Days.
Good evening, directors. Megan Dreger, Conservation and Strategic Partnerships Manager. I don't have any big exciting pictures or updates today, other than wanting to just give you a heads up that our team is working really hard, particularly on a lot of grant applications, and we're hoping to have some good news in the coming months. Monica Nanya is our external funding coordinator in particular. It's full steam ahead and we're crossing our fingers.
And good evening, Elizabeth Loretto, Administrative Operations Manager. Also, no exciting pictures and sadly a lot of compliance topics. A quick reminder that Form 700 season is coming to an end. Applications or submissions are due next Wednesday, April 1st. So if you're in this room and you're a filer, please do your thing and help Caroline not have to chase you down later. And also with the new SB 827 financial training compliance that the board of directors has to do, that is now available on demand from CSDA. So look for an email soon from Caroline with a link so that you can do that at your own convenience. And then the full circle of compliance, just continuing to report that our expenditure plan oversight committee will be meeting next week to review their 24-25 transactions and discuss, and packet will go out tomorrow, but good news is status quo. They're not finding anything weird. That's it.
Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Legal report?
Got enough damage tonight, Madam Chair, but.
Thank you. And then board member report. Yeah, we were to start over here. One, yep.
Well, I was looking for open space opportunities a couple of weeks ago in Hawaii. There are plenty of them on the Big Island. course, Big Island's getting bigger. It was starting to get bigger while we were there. And I did attend the State of the City for City of Morgan Hill, and we got a good shout out. We got a good heads up there. And, every time we mention the trail, El Toro Trail, the room erupts. Just wait. What's taking so damn long? Other than that, I sent an article to you this morning. And I'm just wondering, because this article was in the Mercury News. Saw it in the page 2 of the local section, where people are, because of the kerfuffle in this country, are seeking open space more than ever. I'm wondering, are we seeing that in our preserves too? Are we seeing an uptick? People just needing to get out, get away with all the stuff.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, yes, we are definitely seeing an uptake this spring in people coming out to all of our preserves, including my own Yakima. And it's been beautiful weather this year, so that hopefully is going to continue on. And we have not had one cancellation yet this year, which will be our first time ever not having the cancellation during prime butterfly flower showings. So definitely seeing it. Staff is out there each weekend working and helping people navigate. We recently opened the Coyote Valley Equestrian Lot to parking on the weekends as well to help increase the capacity there. So that's worked out really well. Ranch has seen full capacity as well. So we are definitely seeing an uptick in use even throughout the weeks too.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna try and catch it, but March has been very, very busy. The beginning of the month was special districts meeting. I was reelected chair and Bill Bosworth from the Senate, Cupertino Sanitary District as the vice chair. We had a very intense discussion on builder's remedy. You know, so there's some concerns about ag land and, you know, conversion of property there, so. And the, I'll go back to my notes here. You probably all got, did everybody get a ballot in the mail about the mosquito districts? You remember my report from the last time? That's the mosquito you're gonna be going on. Yeah. And so, for LAFCO, and the ad hoc financial committee, which I chaired, had their meeting. So when you talk about the budget, yes, we were the ones that are putting forward that budget to LAFCO. And probably the next special district meeting, we might focus on the wildlife corridor that's taking place. There's a lot of interest in that. So I'm probably gonna reach out to Post and BTA and whoever. So if anybody has a specific person I should talk to connect about a presentation, please let me know. Okay, and to your, I did get my SB 827 2 hours guides. That's all I'll say. And did my Form 700. Let's see, attended the State of the County where Andrea got a shout out by Supervisor Otto Lee, which was amazing.
Yeah, the state of the county that I got stopped by the sheriff and wasn't let
You
in
weren't allowed
because,
to go in, I got to get seated. But you guys.
yeah, they had hit capacity, no more room.
And I got to table with the very fantastic Megan Drager at the Rotary Play Garden, where I think maybe we highlighted all those people going out to the open space, because we were telling them, go hike, go check out the wildflowers, and obviously, that was a lot of fun. There was a lot of people there, and it was a lot of good time, so, anyway, thank you. Hi.
Well, I have nothing quite so exciting to comment on, but I did want to compliment staff in the last month being ultra responsive in all my questions. And I have a plan to go out and look at some of our preserves with friends. So I have to make 5 people go with me. So I try to up their numbers. And then I do have the Parks Commission meeting next week, which I will attend. And I will have some information to report out to the commission.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of joining Lucas on a tour to Mayana Yakima. So thank you, Lucas, for
doing that on a very hot day, the hottest day of March. And I just also appreciate being able to learn more about your role with the organization and what your team does. And just spending all that time talking about serpentine soil is important to understand. So thank you. I also had a chance to join Andrea and Mark to meet Councilmember Peter Ortiz earlier this month, along with Councilmember Domingo Candelas for the city of San Jose, just to share more about our work for open space. And then I also was at the State of the District for Supervisor Betty Young.
Thank you. Director Gill?
Actually, I have two items to be shared with you. The first one is like the other community has their own New Year's. So actually the Sikh New Year's we already celebrated March 14, and this Sikh New Year's making the beginning of the Nanak Shahi years 558. So this is the year start 558, commence on March 14, 2026. This day is known as first Chet is the month, the name of the month, which is when the new year is start. The first month in the Nanak Shahi calendar, which is a solar-based calendar that corresponds with the seasons. The main message is to start the year with a high spirit and a commitment to service society. This is the first one we just celebrated in. Actually, every Sikh temple celebrate throughout not only United States, all over the globe. So the second one is the same thing. The last weekend, Sunday, March 22nd, Hola Mahalla. If you heard that, Holi you already heard, but that's a Hindu festival. And then the next day is a Hola Mahalla. That is the Sikh festival. Was celebrated at San Jose Sikh Temple. Hola Mahalla is celebrated from March 4 to March 6, primarily in the city of Anandpur, Punjab, India. This 3-day Sikh festival, founded by Sikh 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, showcase martial arts, horse riding, and poetry, falling the day after the Hindu festival of Holi to celebrate Sikh heritage, courage, and community. So these are the two really a big event in March we celebrated. And actually, the Hola Mahalla, there was a lot of, you can say the community members are there, not only the Sikh community, almost every elected officers was there too, Matt Mehan, mayor, and then all the city councils, not only the city of San Jose, the other city councils as well. And I get the chance to go there and then speak about Open Space Authority as well. Thank you.
And I wanted to report that Andrea and I had the opportunity to go to the San Jose City Council District 1 leadership meeting last Saturday. We were the energetic bright spot in their meeting. That way, people came up afterwards saying thank you for the presentation. Almost everybody there had heard about Heritage Oaks. So the word is definitely out there. Andrea gave a great overview of the organization, but it was very uplifting for the neighborhood leaders who were there to hear from us about the work that we do collectively and the progress we make and the changes we're able to make. So with that, I think we need to adjourn back to closed session. Is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair, for items 3 and 4 on the closed session agenda.
So we will be adjourned to closed session and then.
You just have 2 words to say. You notice what's done. Where's my notes here?
Council,
No report.
no report, closed session, thank you. Did we have any other public comments?
Every night.
If any members of the public who are joining us via Zoom would like to comment, please raise your hand. There are none.
Thank you, then I will adjourn the meeting at 9:36. Thank you all very much, have a